And what year was that?
1911.
1911. And how long did you live in China?
About, well, it's hard to tell, but I would say about 5 years.
About 5 years?
Yes, about nearly 4 years. We made a trip across and back for a long, and then went around 5 years. Nearly 6. 4, but four, six. But,
And you came back to California, right?
well,
When you came back from China, you lived in California?
well, yes, sort of. Then, wait a minute. Now the ship that landed in Maine. No, on the left hand, the water came out over. When you, but just above America, is a very good place to have that.
Oh, in Canada?
Canada, it's Canada.
Oh.
The trade, the change from China, when it almost parallels and put all the things in their chain. And then they brought it down from them, from the southern, the lower.
And so did you grow up in California?
Well,
When you were young, where did you live?
when I finished just high school, I had all gone to 10 skilled schools, all America.
Oh.
10 squares.
10 different schools?
Yes, 10 different schools. Well, the first one was at Berkeley.
Was it in San Jose?
No,
Huh?
it's this country. It's about 40.
Was it Baltimore?
Yes,
Ah, you lived in Baltimore
Baltimore.
for quite a few years?
Yes, for quite a few years, or almost 10 years. Because my father was working with them, and he was bringing from the idea.
What did your father do?
Well, he was, he got about 4 credits. He was a mention. And,
Was he a doctor?
Doctor, yes. Dr. Bolt, Richard. And he had gone to school and to learn a lot about construction and buildings. And buildings and house. And my mother was very narrow. She was there for several years. Well, when I was just between about 4 or 5 years, 40 or 50 years, there was only men in Stanford, women not.
Oh.
And the first year of this century,
1901.
for 1901, they said we will now put in predators. And the very first woman put in predator was my daughter.
Your mother.
My mother.
She was one of the very first women?
She was the very first word. Her name
At Stanford.
At Stanford, yes.
And where did your father go to school?
At Berkeley.
Berkeley.
And Oakland. And then southern, in different parts.
And that's where you went to school too, right? Berkeley?
I went to school here. Berkeley and Oakland and San Francisco and San Jose and I could write down to about 6 or 8 different sounds around the California. I took.
And so you went to school at Berkeley and you got a degree in architecture, right?
I got 9 or 10 schools before that. I did that. And in Berkeley, it'd been
in Baltimore?
Yes. Baltimore, 3 places, and another one in Washington, twice, and the town, 2 or 3, several towns where I studied on for a year or 2, and I know in summary from the first grade to ready through the highway. I got taught 10 buildings. I built in 10 buildings, north, south, and east and west. In San Jose, I was one. In Washington, about halfway across the country. Where there in that school at Southern California. But I went to I had 10 scheduled schools before I was ready for college. And they were my father and mother, they believing in doing just what they were doing.
That's great. So
they were introducing the ideas of medicine
in China,
in this country.
in this country.
Yeah, all over this country.
Oh. So tell me about the first time that you met Kay. When was that?
Well, it's in Japan.
The first time you met Kay was in California, right? And where were you? Were you in church?
Oh, no. Well, she liked the church.
Yeah. Did you meet her in the choir at church?
Yes, it was a church.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the choir. There was about 28 people that sang,
Mm-hmm.
and they had rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting that sometimes I have a rehearsal at 8:30 a.m.
Ah.
until 10, and then the school, the church goes on.
Right.
And other times we're Crystal Eve
Mm-hmm.
for say 6 or 7 in the evening, and for an hour and a half.
And so you met Kay at a church choir rehearsal?
I walked from my house in Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
1 block, down a block, to 2 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And she was there, lived a house there.
Mm-hmm.
That her father, who was minister.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes, well, he
Yeah.
in Southern,
His name was Smith, right?
Smith, yes.
Frank Heron Smith.
That's exactly the name.
And that was her father.
That's her father. And I was, the time I first heard, I was sitting at the third round at a practice play of the church. And I was sitting there. There were about 20 people. I guess it was really 22 people in three. And one day I came in and sat down and looked, and the woman I just sat to her before, what is your and she told me her name. And what are you doing about it? Oh, I was singing. I've enjoyed it. I was singing. I met her. She was right there.
Oh.
And
How old were you? About 18 or?
Yeah, something like that. That's a good. I'll never forget her father
Mm-hmm.
was a minister,
Mm-hmm.
and the great credits too. Minister in college. Anyway, he was. I can still see the father with her walking up, and I'm up above at the finish. She's come. He brings her right to the front row,
Mm-hmm.
and I stand there, and I make pledges between me and her, and so on.
Right.
But our father walked up in there. He was also a minister.
Uh-huh. Now, what did her father say to you when you asked Kay to marry you? And you went to ask his permission, right?
Oh yes, I did.
And what did he say to you when you asked his permission?
If I hadn't liked you long ago, I would have kicked you out.
That's what he said, huh?
That's what he said.
Ah.
I was kicked you out.
Ah.
He was going to kick me out.
He was a man with red hair, right?
Yes, that's right, and he was a minister.
He was a minister.
And the teachings north, maybe 30 or 40 miles north of San Francisco.
Mm.
So much of what I did is Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco. It's all one thing.
Oh.
And occasionally the two of them seen. Well, anyway, yes.
And you got.
I was there. The rehearsal, and sitting down, and then a girl I've never seen before walked into the seats and looked up and stepped up and sat down right next to me. And I asked after at the end of the meet that the head of the guest, what is this girl? She's doing? And said, oh, their family just moved in. The family last 2 years ago, and that was the way I saw her. And then we started having meeting, teachers once each week. We would spend time, an hour and a half of about that. And she sat right next to me most of those places, and a beautiful voice. And I had a certain voice. And then we all were together even with the church. The church, I can see it by myself. It was right near the university, about a mile from the house.
What, after you and Kay were married,
Yes.
then you got a degree in architecture, right?
Yes, I have a degree in architecture.
And then it was the early 1930s.
That's right.
And where did you go after that?
Well, then I have other degrees. First degree, degree in acoustics.
Where did you go on your honeymoon with Kay? Do you remember?
I'll have to think about that.
Did you go to Germany?
No. But we went in a boat out a little bit way.
Ah.
I was doing it, and we asked her. Then I asked her about what do you think? Would you marry me?
Right. That's when you asked her to marry you. And then you got married.
Sure.
And then you went on a honeymoon, right? After that, after you were married.
Yes.
Did you go to Germany?
No.
You didn't? I thought you went to Germany to study. I thought you went to Germany to study physics.
You're asking me too many things.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I haven't.
Did you go to Germany
yes,
to study
she
physics? German?
Well, I spoke German after one month. I spoke German. But I can up here. There was a friend who spoke German, and it was somewhere, and because maybe I'll tell differently. First sort of that way, and I studied the first for 1 month of the French.
Of German.
Of German, and so that I got quite a way over there.
And you went to Germany?
I went to Germany and to yes, and I was only about 6 weeks there, and then I went to Germany. But I talked to the people there, and
did you live with families when you were there?
I met families, 3 different families up there in Newman. And they were all just interested in what I was doing. I learned that German language very, very easily, and called them. I could see one in the corner of the two streets, and that's the one I wanted. She just loved that place, and she was anyway.
So when you were in Germany, the Nazis were coming into power, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so Hitler was the leader.
Yeah, he was. That was all went off on them, son. There's one group of people. They world Hitler. He's marvelous.
They worshipped Hitler.
Yes, worship. Secondly, there's another different that hate Hitler and wish he would stop. And the third were that don't much care which you have in this case. I've asked a lot of these, what do you think of them? And I lived in, and I decided that I lived in the family of Germans, and the first one that I left with was very, very nice. They were a good family, and I was in about 2 months visiting them and talking German language. And another place, there were three homes. I went in homes and asked for the part. An American, what do you call it? There was an American and in German who was interested in English, being living in German. There's a name for that. He was very, very good, and he was English, and he was there from but Yeah, that's right. And we talked about it. And the woman there were three families that I spent some time with about a month each at a time. And I was learning the language. And by the end of about 6 weeks, I remember that I started talking to German. He said, "Well, I had 3 or 4 people who said that, well, it sounds that it was the low southern German that you live." Really?
Sound like you were from southern Germany?
Yes.
Ah.
A few people said that to me when I went there. Oh yes, one of the American families who were there in China, they in England and France. Well, it's mixed up.
I have a question for you, though.
Yes.
Didn't you get your PhD in acoustics?
Yes.
Is that right?
Just about.
That was in the late 30s, right?
Yes,
I think it was 1939.
Yeah, I think so.
And then World War II happened.
Yes.
And what did you do during World War II?
Well, I was sent over there to help.
You were sent over to England, right?
New England, yes. And in southern, yes. I studied in southern England, and I knew quite a lot about acoustics, and I studied that there.
What were you doing over in England?
Helping them out, doing. I don't know.
Was there a problem with
No.
submarines?
No. There, I wish I had been written down somewhere. Before I had finished high school or college, I wanted to go to the Germans, and I went in there, 3 families. After about 2 months, families A, B, and C. Ones that were worshippers of Hitler, and ones that hate Hitler, and the third that they didn't care. And there was that. And that was about half a year of they living in 3 towns.
Right.
But before I did any of these things, I had the American parents in China, not China, anyway.
So, but
they're American. There's a room or a house in there, and he helped me very much. He was there appointed to the German. There's an American representative in Germany. That was a good idea.
So during the war, though, you were helping the English,
Yes,
right?
That's right.
And you were helping them in the English Channel?
Well, the main thing, I did several things, but they were really interested about this 20 feet, 20 minutes. England is about 20 miles deep from mainland.
Mainland. That means France, right?
In France and all, but in south.
Yeah.
But in the north, the 2 or 3 of the small
Countries, right.
countries are there.
So what was happening in the Channel?
Well, I helped them about. I moved into Washington, and I talked there, and also I had 2 or 3, maybe 3 sets in the office in Germany, in France,
in England.
Yeah, in England, but I forget how. And that was very helpful. There were about 3 Americans that did a lot of details for me when I said I wanted such and such. But it was in. You see, I had ROTC in high school, 2 years of it, and 2 of it ROTC of high school, and in college. And the second year, I was the head of this of the ROTC. There are about, I know, there was 22 people who were on there, and I was elected the head of the tomb. It was German. Because
Now,
I knew there was a time there that I spoke German better than English.
really?
I went up there. They had a family, and a very, very nice family.
Oh, good.
People, and I lived in the family 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I'd really written into the language.
Well, after World War II,
yes,
in the late 1940s, that's when you and Leo Beranek
yes,
started your company, right?
Yes, that's right.
What was the name of the company?
Bolt, Beranek, and Newman.
Yeah, and at that time it was just Bolt and Beranek at
Bolt,
first.
Beranek.
And so you and Leo Beranek started
right.
the company.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what were you doing? You were doing architectural acoustics?
Well, both architectural, but with anything to do with construction of the buildings. So, you know, I was in saw and I, yeah, they're with the first, a little over a year, it was Bolt Beranek.
And then
the very good student would come up to there from South America, it's just above that is to be named. And he went to Europe to do it. He got interested in it.
So Bob Newman
yes.
joined your company, and you became Bolt, Beranek, and Newman.
That's right. Exactly.
And that was about 1950, right?
Now there were two more. The three of us, the Bolt, Beranek, and Newman. Newman died. He surprisingly wrong.
Yeah, he died very young, didn't he?
He died again.
That's too bad.
He was very similar to ideas of mine. That he was good with procedure and architecture and so on. There were two others that we thought would help us a lot, and one was Beranek, and both their names were C. And we asked them if they would help us. And this, I'll never forget. They were all, the three of us, Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, and these other two. And he said, I will eat you if you do not change the letters, the names of the vendor. This is Bolt, Beranek, and Newman.
So he said he'd join the company as long as you didn't change the name.
Right. Bolt, Beranek, he had the three people to give the name. The first person alive was Newman, and he was very sick and then died. But the first few years he was well. And yes, there were two other. They were five instead of three then for a while. Five with two others.
Right.
But they did change. They didn't want the name changed. They both Beranek and Newman. They liked that BBN. I for a year.
Now you had a star student when you were teaching.
Yes.
Where did you teach? Did you teach at MIT?
I think, yeah. I did some teach at Harvard.
So
and some and a lot of teach at the MIT. But also I taught in between at different two or three places.
What did you teach? What subjects?
I wish I could just remember things.
You taught acoustics, of course.
Yes. Okay. Well, they gave me a building at the corner of the school, and I had my school there, and a man.
It was a laboratory, right?
Yes, and the person that was very helpful. So you walk in, you open the door and walk in, and on the left side there was the room that I was living, and on the right side was this friend. I don't remember, and that Ray Lane may come to me, and he did a lot of things for me. And it was very Beranek. Yes.
Beranek?
Yeah, that's right.
It was Beranek.
He was Beranek.
So you're working with Beranek at the acoustics laboratory.
Yes.
At MIT.
Yeah.
Now, did you had a star student named Ken Olsen, right?
Yes.
And what did Ken Olsen ask you one day? Do you remember? Ken Olsen made a computer, right?
Yes. It was the first one in Europe.
First one in.
First one in anywhere.
First one anywhere.
Yes.
What do you remember? What it was called? Was it PDP?
The what?
PDP? Yeah. The name of the computer. It was the first computer, right?
Yeah. No, I can see in the lecture that I gave,
Mm-hmm.
there were 22. I know that number of students in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and this man in the front room, halfway between the middle of the ring and the start, and he just sat there and looked at everything I said, and very, very, very good. And his name was Beranek.
Ken Olsen?
Yes, Ken Olsen. That's Ken Olsen. And he was, and I was very surprised that he gave an A, and he was clearly the best student of the 22 in the room.
Mm.
And Ken Olsen.
And so then later he made a computer.
Yes.
And your company,
That's right.
BBN. What did did you buy the computer? You bought the computer that his company made, right? The first computer.
Well,
that
I
his
built
company
one
made.
first.
Oh, you built one
I
first.
built one to myself, and then I decided that this fellow was I met her and talked with several, and I liked what this fellow did it, Olsen, and I asked them if they would wife. It was a much more complicated thing than I was with this drawing.
So what did you do in the 1960s? Didn't you go to Washington, D.C.?
I was there for a while and
what were you doing there?
The American.
Was it the National Science Foundation? Were you working with?
Yes, and I was the second highest.
You were the associate director?
Yeah, absolutely, and for a few years.
In the early 60s.
And I lived in Baltimore for a while, for 12 years, Baltimore.
Right.
And whiz.
And then later in the 70s, you had to do a special panel, work with a special panel, right? Because the president at the time had some recordings.
Yes.
It was President Nixon.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I certainly do.
And you were the head of the panel.
Yes.
And you had to analyze some tapes, right?
Yes, that's right.
What did you find out from analyzing those tapes?
Who's the person?
It was Nixon, Richard Nixon.
That's right. It was Nixon. No, I was very much pleased with what he had done. Written on.
But he had recorded some tapes,
and
you listened to the tapes, right?
Yes.
And you found out that he had erased some tapes, right?
Well, no. Well, I listened to them, and yes, well, there were a few minor changes I suggested, and he would make them. But it was funny.
Can you tell me about the Kay's, when you and Kay had your 50th anniversary?
Well,
remember that?
Yeah, it was she was in Japan for the same way I was in China.
Right.
And we met each other in Berkeley.
Right.
And I was one day sat in for the rehearsal and sat down, and this girl that I'd never seen before walked in and came about. I was on the 3rd Street, 1, 2, 3. Then there were about 20 of us there, 18 or 20 people, and I sat up to the 3rd year. And then this woman just came in and sat down next to me. And afterwards, so she was very interesting. And then after a while, I thought she sang very well. And then she's the only girl I really have. Well, you know that I whizzed with her, and knew her until she died. And she's the only person that I ever married. And she was just wonderful. And I just loved her completely. This is a strange world, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was, oh, Catherine Smith. Yeah, Catherine Smith.
That's her name.
And then I met her father, who was very nice.
What was her father's name?
Smith.
Frank Smith, right?
Frank Smith. And I can remember them walking. Then I'm up in the building, and up in the seat. There were about 15 or 20 people there. And she came down, walking down, holding her arm with her, and right up to the front. And then she was introduced, and then she came up and sat up there. Oh,